First of all, take a look at that description box down below and you will find out all the information on how to get this free pattern. Taking the template, you are going to cut all the parts out, all around the outside of the seam allowance. Okay, so you're going to have 4 pieces to your template. A and B are going to be exactly the same. I'll show you how to do A and not B, and then we'll move on to C and D. So I've got 3 different pinks on this quilt block, so I'm going to have to remind myself which one's the light, medium and dark. And I'm probably going to write this on the template so I don't confuse myself. So on my template, I've done M, D and L. And I've also marked all of my fabric, so light, medium, dark. I'm going to start with A1 and A2. I'm going to fold it over. When I do paper piecing like this, sometimes it's easier for you just to use solid colours so you can get into the gist of how this all works. So I have on here, so it's a medium. I'm going to take a medium and then a dark pink. And then what I like to do is fold this over, and I want that dark pink to be there. So you've got your dark pink touching the paper. You've got 1/2 inch seam allowance, and I'm just going to flip that up. And then you're going to have these 2 fabrics, so it's right sides facing. So if you are doing a print, they're right sides facing each other. I'm going to take this over to sewing machine and we're going to stitch right along this line. This is my Baby Lock Soprano. I'm not paid nor sponsored to create this video. Now in the top of this thread here, we're going to have a Gutermann regular polyester sewing thread. In the needle today, we're going to have the 9014 Microtext sewing needle. Regular foot on your sewing machine, bobbin thread in the bobbin, and we're going to take this stitch down to a 1.6. Didn't want to go then. And then also I like to take this in a couple, so it's a 3.5, which is dead center on that needle. Now we are going to sew forward, reverse, and sew forward. And then reverse again. There's going to be 2 tails on this, so I'm going to take this off. And then take this off. It's just nice to keep everything tidy as we go along. Then what we're going to do is flip this back and just press it down, and then flip your work back over again, and then fold this over where it says A3. You can then go ahead, cut this away, move the paper back, and then we're going to get another medium colour of fabric. Place that face down, flip the paper over and stitch right along this line. And once again, you're going to push that fabric back, look for A4, fold it over, trim, find your next fabric, which is a dark pink, place it over and stitch, fold back, do A5, cut this away, going to get a medium pink, and stitch that into place right along this line here. Then once again, you're going to flip that back And then you've got your last section here, which is A6. And then you're going to trim that off 1/4 inch. Just making sure that everything's lined up there. And get your light pink section. Then you can stitch across. Flip that up. Turn the whole unit over. And now you're going to trim it. When you're trimming, just make sure that you don't take any of the paper away, because that is your seam allowance. You're going to do it right next to the edge. And you're going to trim all the sides. Go ahead and do exactly the same thing with section B. You can just rewind this video and watch me do the first part of A. So this is now A and B of the template, and we're going to move on to section C. So again, we want to find 1 and 2. So I'm going to fold this over and I'm going to get a piece of dark pink and medium pink. Medium pink will be touching the paper and the dark pink will be away from it. Remember, we need that 1/4 inch. Flip this over so these fabrics will be right sides together. And then you're going to take it back over to your sewing machine and you're going to stitch right across this line. Flip your fabric back like so. And then you want to look for section 3, which is over here. Just going to fold this back again. We're going to cut off the excess, 1/4 inch. Flip that back. I'm going to get a dark piece of fabric here. Put it right sides down, turn it over and sew right across here. We're going to flip this back, like so. And then we're going to find our next section, which is C4. We're going to trim. And then we're going to get our light pink here. And we are going to put that right sides down. And we're going to stitch it into place. Flip that up. Then turn it the other way around because we need to do the centre piece here. So once again, you're going to trim that off. And then we're going to do the centre piece here. I got this brown gingham. I thought that would be super cute. Right sides down. Stitch into place. You're going to flip that back, then go turn the whole unit around, and you're going to trim along the outside again, and just don't take off any of the paper as you're doing this. This is what section C looks like. So we just need to do our final section on our mini quilt, which is section D. Find out where your D1 and your D2 is. I need a dark and a medium piece of fabric. My medium piece of fabric is touching the paper and the darker part is away. So these are right sides together. Turn that back over again and you go sew right across this line. Flip back. Turn the whole section over. Then you've got D, fold this back over and you are going to trim 1/4 inch. Line the next piece up, which is a dark pink. And you'll once again sew along this line here. Then D4 is a light pink. And you're going to trim. Line that fabric up, which is over here. and turn the whole section around and stitch across. Flip back and then turn everything back around, and you can once again trim the outside. What I like to do is place my block out, so this is how it's going to look. So what we need to do first is these two sections. So I'm going to move these two out of the way, and then we're going to take the papers out of these. And the papers will come out really easily. Now what you're going to do here, you're going to put these right sides together, like so. You're going to take this over to your sewing machine, and you need to stitch this at 1/4 inch. So you need to make sure that your sewing machine is set to 1/4 inch. I use my sewing foot with a guide, my 1/4 inch foot with guide, and I put it on a setting 30. Go ahead and take this to your iron and press. Just make sure that you don't stretch it out. Now we're going to attach one of the side sections. So we need to take the paper out of here. I recommend that you fold this unit in half and find out where the center is on both sides. Just make sure it's all nice and lined up and press. And then let's fold this as well. So we can make a central mark in here. And then where these two centers meet, you're going to fold them, place them right sides together. Double check that that is in the center mark that we just did. And then you're going to sew it at 1/4 inch. And another way of checking is that this seam here should be matching with this seam here and on the other side. And then you get to flip this open and you can press. Then you are going to take the other section out and do exactly the same thing. Oh no, the teacher did the block wrong. We're going to carry on. We're going to pretend we can't see it. Don't do that. So next thing we're going to do is we're going to do a quilt sandwich. I do actually like these moments when things don't go correctly, because I don't want you to think that everything is perfect behind this camera, because it isn't. So we have the backing fabric, we've got the batting, and we have the quilt top. So now I'm going to do a decorative stitch all around here. Okay, so we're going to continue to ignore the fact that this has been a naughty block. So we are going to cut around the excess of this. Now we are going to put the binding on. So I kind of cheat when they're this small because they're just too tiny to do a proper quilt binding. So you're going to quilt like you normally do, and you're going to stop when you get to the two ends. You're going to have the ends that are overlapping like this, but before we do anything, we want to hide them raw edges. So you're going to take both these ends, you're going to flip them over, press them down, and that'll hide them raw edges. So with them both folding onto each other, you are going to sew that into place. That was my cat. Now what we're going to do is flip this back and then grip it with wonder clips. Now go ahead and hand bind on the back. I hope you've enjoyed watching this tutorial. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss my next video. Comment, like, and I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.